Welcome to our first Mailbag episode. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and I make videos about sewing and styling a handmade wardrobe. I'm starting a new series today where I answer questions that you asked me in my community tab. The topic can be about anything sewing or crafting related, or about personal style, or really anything at all. And today I'm going to answer two questions, so let's just get right to it. So the first question is from two different people. It's essentially a very similar question, so I just grouped them together. Expressionist Makes asks, what do you do for work? And Yvette So Over 50 asks, I'm curious what you do for work and if the day-to-day function of your job offers liberty or boundaries on what garments you can sew or wear to work. So I'm a website and social media coordinator for a couple of departments at a local university. I won't get into the specifics because I don't think that it's very safe to tell everyone on the internet where you live and work. But in a university setting, I do have a very casual workplace. I can pretty much wear whatever I want to work. I actually do kind of impose some boundaries on myself, but they're more personal boundaries rather than dress code boundaries. For example, I don't wear things like really short skirts or shorts or off-shoulder tops or things like that to work just because I personally feel like it's inappropriate. But honestly, if I did walk in wearing something like that, probably no one would bat an eye. So in general, when I go to work, I do tend to be a little bit more dressed up than my peers. And I think I do that because I'm short and I'm used to being treated like I'm much younger than I actually am. That's probably not an issue anymore now that I'm in my 40s, but it was definitely an issue earlier in my life. A lot of people had trouble distinguishing me from the students. And so I would dress up a little bit more so I would be taken more seriously. And I think I've just gotten into the habit of that. But in general, I would say I wear fairly casual clothes to work. Like I wear jeans all the time, but maybe I'll dress it up a little bit more with like a blouse or a button-up shirt. And I do try to always be a little bit more polished when I'm at work, just so that I look like I belong there and I'm in the workplace and not a student. Now, the second question is from Lynn5209, and she would like some tips on what photography equipment that I use and any tips or tricks for taking beautiful photos. So first of all, Lynn, thank you so much for the compliment and for asking the question. I'm really excited to share with you what I've learned over the years because I basically started from nothing. I'll put up a few pictures of what my photos used to look like just so you can see that I basically started from the very beginning. And just like sewing, photography is a skill and it's something that you can improve at over time. And in the beginning, I was so bad at it that I basically needed to improve every aspect, which sounds kind of overwhelming. But if you just take it one step at a time, like today, I'm going to improve my lighting, or today, I'm going to improve my posing, then eventually you will get better at those things. And over time, you can get some pretty decent photos. Now, just putting this out there, I am not an expert. I'm definitely not a professional photographer or anything. There's plenty of advice out there on the internet if you are looking for someone who really knows what they're talking about. I'm just going to share a few things that I've learned over time that have really been helpful to me. I'm still learning about it myself, but if I can get better, you can get better, and I hope that this is encouraging. So starting off with equipment, I take my photos on my iPhone 16 Pro, and I got that earlier in January this year. And before that, I was using my iPhone 13 Pro, not the Max. I mostly use portrait mode, but not always. I will often use my little tripod or selfie stick. I will link the one that I have down in the description box, and I do use affiliate links, but feel free to not use those if you don't want to. And for actually taking the photos, I do use my Apple Watch because it has a shutter right on it, so it's very convenient. And before I realized that I could use my Apple Watch, I was using like a Bluetooth remote, which is usually pretty inexpensive, and it works for both Android and iPhones. And most of the time for editing, I do use the native Photos app. Every once in a while, I'll use Photoshop, but for the most part, I just do it right on my phone. So that's really it for the equipment. I don't use any fancy equipment. And having your phone is really nice because it's convenient and it's usually always with you. Now, in terms of general advice that I could give, the first thing is that it's a lot easier to get nice photos when you take them in natural light outdoors. I still struggle with indoor photos and the lighting myself. And there are just a few tips for when you're taking photos outdoors. Try to avoid standing in direct sunlight. So there's this thing called the golden hour. Usually it's right after the sun comes up or right before the sun goes down. That's usually a really good time to take photos. Or on a cloudy day, the clouds diffuse the light so it's not so harsh. Or if you do have to take pictures when it's really sunny out, try to stand in the shade, like under a tree or by a building or something, just so that you're not standing in direct sunlight because it's really harsh. My second tip is to take lots of pictures. I still remember the days when we were using film cameras and it felt like a waste taking tons of pictures because it's expensive to develop those things. That age is obviously long gone. With digital cameras and phones, you can just take as many pictures as you want. And quite honestly, especially in the early days, if I just took dozens and dozens of photos, there was a good chance that there were at least a few of them would turn out well. So don't be afraid to take lots of pictures. My third tip is to accept help if it is offered to you. So for a while, when I decided to start trying to improve my photography, my husband actually offered himself to help me. Like, he would drive me to a location and take the pictures. But eventually I stopped asking for help because, not that he was complaining or anything, but I just knew that photography wasn't his thing. It wasn't something he was really interested in. And I knew that this was going to be a big undertaking that I was going to do a lot. So I didn't want to burden him anymore. But just in case you happen to have a budding photographer in your family or someone who really wants to help you, go ahead and accept their help, because it is a lot easier when you have somebody to assist you than it is to do everything yourself. My next tip is about inspiration. If you see photos on Pinterest or Instagram or other social media that you really like, just take a minute to study the photo and see what it is that you liked about it. Is it the angle of the camera? Is it the way that the person is posing? It's always a good idea to look at other photos, see the things that you like, and try to replicate those elements in your own photos. And my last general tip is for us shorties out there. If you're a short person, it can be helpful to angle the camera so that it's tilted just slightly so that it's looking up at you from below. Now, don't do this in an extreme way. Like, don't put the camera on the floor and have it looking up at you so that you can see up your nostrils. Like, we're not talking about that extreme, but just angling it ever so slightly can actually make you look a little bit taller. So I do implement that trick quite a lot in my own photos, and I just think that it's a helpful tip. So I also have quite a few tips specifically about posing, because that was something that I felt really awkward about in the beginning, and I felt like I needed a lot of help. And these tips really did improve my photos quite a lot once I got some practice. So the first thing is, it can be helpful to have props. Now, I don't really mean like you see those photos where somebody's got a bouquet of flowers and they're holding it in front of their face. I mean, I think those photos are really nice and they're pretty, but personally, I would never do that because it's just not something that I would have on hand, and it would be really awkward to me and like kind of fake if I did something like that. But I just mean that if you feel awkward, especially with your hands, and you don't know what to do with your hands, having something to hold can be really helpful. So that's why a lot of my photos, I have handbags, or there's other accessories that you can touch. Like if you're wearing a hat, you can kind of touch the brim, or you can hold it in your hands. If you have sunglasses, you can put them on or off. If you're wearing a pretty dress, you can kind of hold the dress in your hand and swish around. Just utilize whatever's natural about the outfit, but it's helpful to have something to hold in your hands, just in case you don't know what to do with them, or you're always stuffing them in your pockets or something, or putting it on your hip. Having something to hold on to is really helpful. My next tip is to take the time to actually style your outfit. You know, put on some makeup, wear some accessories, actually put together an outfit, as opposed to just throwing the garment on and snapping a picture with whatever you're wearing. Of course, you can do that if you don't have time to style your outfit, and I do that all the time. But if I want to really have nice photos and showcase something that I've just made, I do try to put together a whole outfit, usually in a way that I would normally wear it, in order to really show off the garment to its fullest potential. Now, this next one, I definitely got it from a YouTube video, but I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what the source was. But basically, I watched a video where they advised the style of poses that you use, that it's usually helpful if it's reflective of your own personality. So basically, they were explaining that there's two different types of poses. There's more like external poses where you make really big active poses. You know, the ones where you're like jumping, like holding your arms out. And that usually those kinds of poses work really well for people who are very extroverted. Whereas if you're a little bit more introverted like I am, I'm way more of the shy girl pose where you just kind of look down or like look off to the side, and that it can feel a little bit more natural to do poses that coexist with your actual personality. I have definitely found this because I've tried to do the big exaggerated poses, and usually I just feel like an idiot. I've done a few, I don't think that they look great. I'm not saying that I would never do anything like that, but I definitely think it looks better when I do the poses that feel a little bit more natural to me. So if you're just starting out, maybe it's a good idea to kind of stick to things that feel a little bit more normal to you, rather than trying to do something that feels very unnatural. And lastly, I do have a couple of social media accounts that I think are really good to follow that I've gotten a lot of really great advice from, and I will link them both down in the description box. The first person is Christine Buzan, and I apologize if I don't say these names right, but she has really practical posing advice on how to position your body to look your best. She has really great tips and a really wonderful like body positivity message that anybody, no matter what your size or shape or age, can look really beautiful in photos. I just find her very positive, and I really like watching her reels. I do think she offers courses. I haven't taken any of the courses, but I've just looked at her material that's available on Instagram, and I just think that she has really good practical tips that you can actually do. The second person is David Sue. He's a pro photographer. He also has a lot of really great advice for posing. I think he kind of has a system where he explains that each joint is like a pivot point where you can do different poses and you can kind of flow in and out of them the way that you move your body. It sounds complicated the way that I'm saying it, but he explains it very simply. He has a really great beginner video that I think he calls like posing yoga or something, and I will link that down in the description box. I've also found his advice really helpful, and honestly, I should probably polish up and watch it again because I've been feeling a little bit stale in my own poses lately, and maybe I could use a refresh and get some new ideas. So thank you so much to today's questioners, and if you have any questions for me, you can leave them in the community thread, which I will link in a pinned comment to this video. I will eventually try to answer everyone's questions. I'm planning to do this series maybe every other week, and I'll answer 1 or 2 questions per video, so it's going to take a little while, but just be patient and I will get to your question. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video.